This is exactly who to stash on your bench so you can dominate later down the line of the season in fantasy football. That's not the basic guys you've heard 10 times over. As well as a list of defenses at the end that have a really good matchup in week 6, a decent matchup this week that you can stash and stay 1 week ahead of everybody trying to scramble to get them on their waiver wire. And as we get into it, go ahead and hit that like button. We have our beautiful like goal right here. It would help me out a ton. If you want to subscribe, you like these videos, it would mean a ton to me as well. And our first player, I do not like to waste time, is Trey Tucker. And the primary fact of this is because Davante Adams has a very real chance of not being on the team anymore. If not almost 100% chance, he will be traded. But outside of that fact that's relatively not controllable by him, his snaps have been increasing, likely because Adams has been out and is expecting a trade. But the last 2 weeks, he's seen over 80% of the snaps. And his game logs have shown success in the snaps that he's seeing. 9 targets in week 3, 6 targets last week with no Davante Adams. And we need to stay 1 week ahead of everybody in fantasy football. That's how you win. Davante Adams is almost guaranteed to miss week 5 with a hamstring. It's because he's holding out. He wants a trade. I don't really think it's anything to do with being injured. But regardless, he's not going to play in week 5 against the Broncos. That's a spot start for you as well. The hardest matchup does go to Jacoby Myers against PS2. I would not be starting Jacoby Myers. We all know what happens when Patrick Surtain plays against the wide receiver 1. Trey Tucker might have some success. But a fun stat for you, he's averaging more fantasy points through 4 weeks than Garrett Wilson, Ayuk, and Zay Flowers. The Raiders are 9th in pass attempts per game, so the volume is going to be there. Their defense also is nowhere near what I expected it to be in the beginning of the season. So, when you don't have a defense, you have to pass to stay in games, and that doesn't look like it's going to change at all. The number one issue I've had with Trey Tucker is that there's just not enough room in this offense. If you have Davante Adams, Myers, and then Brock Bowers, but he's shown upside in the small sample size that he has seen a good amount of snap share. That makes me think he is a very good add this week. Again, Davante Adams, there's no way that he stays on the team. Let me know where you guys think he's going to go, what team he's landing on. But Chase Brown is another running back. He's rostered in a good amount of leagues, so you might actually have to send a trade offer to go get him. Either way, if he is rostered, he's not going to be at super high value just yet, or at least compared to what it will be later down the line of the season. But times in this backfield are 100% changing. It's a little bit harder to see to the naked eye. But let's get into it. Chase Brown has, since the beginning of training camp, struggled with his vision and with pass blocking. Those are the two things that he comes off the field for Zach Moss pretty much exclusively. Technically is inexperience if you want to add that too, but that doesn't really matter for running backs. But if we look into these actual statistics a bit deeper, the Bengals are last, 32nd in running screens for running backs. So 99% of the targets that these Bengals running backs get every week is just coming from shedding off a block. It's just blocking and then running a route. They don't actually run RB screen plays. They've only ran 2 through 4 weeks. So because of that, like we talked about, Zach Moss is the better blocker. So Zach Moss is on the field more blocking, which makes him run more routes and get more receiving work. So really that's hidden and it's not real. Zach Moss isn't actually a better receiving back. It's not really what his role is. Chase Brown just never gets a chance to even see those snaps because he's still working on being a better blocker for this really good pass game. But going back to what I was saying about seeing the switch in week 4, we finally start to see that with the snap share, not only but the usage numbers. All these numbers based on week 4, the goal line work was split 50-50. Zach Moss had 4 touches inside the 5. Chase Brown had 3. Rushing work was split 50-50. They both had 15 carries. Routes run out of the backfield wasn't 50-50. 15 for Zach Moss, but 11 for Chase Brown. That's an improvement because he's running his 11 routes not primarily from blocking. He saw the best snap share he has all season at 40% of the snaps last week. He had a season high with 23 fantasy points. This is exactly what we wanted to see with Chase Brown. Looking forward to the future. So I still believe that he will be the RB1 at some point. Will it be a 90-10 split? No. At some point, it'll probably be more like a 70-30. That is still valuable enough in this Bengals backfield. And this next guy is a handcuff running back, but it's not your typical,
well, go get Tank Bigsby, go get Tyler Algier, go get all these other guys, maybe even Bucky Irvin. Like, we need to be rostered.
They should already be rostered on your team in general. But number 2, their upside's already been shown. And if you're looking deeper, we want to stay 1 or 2 weeks ahead of fantasy football. Audric Estime is going to be that answer for you. He's the RB3 for the Broncos. If you're in a 10 team or less, you probably don't need to be rostering Audric Estime. But if you're in a 12 team or anything more than that, I would consider it because the number one reason, Sean Payton does not care what running back comes into this backfield. He's going to start you and give you touches if you look a little bit decent. Like, he just does not care. And we know that if we just look at the game logs through 4 weeks. In week 1, Jaleel McLaughlin led this backfield with 15 touches. In week 2, it was Javonte with 16. In week 3, it was Tyler Bidet who had 9 touches before he got injured. And in week 4, it was back to Javonte Williams. Even Blake Watson is expected to get a touch or 2 in this backfield this week. And that just shows you he quite literally does not care who this RB1 is. Javonte Williams has not looked very good. I will get into that in a second. But Estime is projected to come off IR in week 6, so I would get him now before it's too late. And like we said, nobody's job is safe here on the Broncos. In week 1, before Estime got injured, he only played 4% of the snaps, but he saw 2 carries on those 4% snap share. So that's almost like a carry a play. And that's good because that was week 1, so they planned to use him since the jump. And that somebody is Sean Payton, who for the past 10 plus years has led his backfield to be top 5 in targets. It doesn't matter what team he's on, what running backs he has, he gets his guys targets, which makes these running backs more fantasy relevant. It doesn't matter if they're third strings, those receptions can get them there. And Javonte Williams, not to mention, has been absolutely terrible. His efficiency, his PFF grades are second to last out of every single starting running back that meets the touch criteria. And out of every single running back statistic, he has been bottom 5% in every efficiency rating. So it doesn't look good when Audric Estime is in this offense. He was drafted by Sean Payton. If we know anything about this guy, he loves to start and just pretty much destroy the careers of the players that he comes to the team on. Like, he has a history of doing that. He'll come to the team, get the guy that he drafted, and then give him more snaps than the other guys. It doesn't matter how good they are. I don't know why it happens, but it does. I guarantee you at some point in the season, he's going to have a role, likely right after he gets off his IR stint. The thing is, a 3 running back by committee, it'll probably switch to more of a 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if they completely take Javonte out of this backfield. He's not really getting that many carries in general anyways. But if your league has IR slots, please go out and get Keaton Mitchell. I had him in, I think, the first stash video of the year a couple weeks ago. He's still on here. Last year, if you like Devon Achane, he had a higher efficiency rating than he did. A higher breakaway rate, a higher yard per carry mark. Everything was good. He had a mini breakout, I guess you could say. He was only averaging 8 carries a game in week 9 through 15 when he actually saw comparable carries, and he was averaging 63.5 yards on those 8 carries. And in case you still don't believe in the talent, here's more underlying numbers. He was second in the NFL in explosive run rate, second in missed tackles forced per attempt, and first in yards after contact. Especially considering the Ravens' philosophy with running back play style, they'll switch up the guys if they need to switch the game pace. We've seen that with Justice Hill. If they're playing from behind, he's going to get a majority of the time on field. Derrick Henry's only seeing 50% of the snaps every single game because of that, regardless of what the game script is. The Ravens like to use these change of pace backs, and that's exactly what Keaton Mitchell is. At some point in the season, I fully expect him to take the Justice Hill role completely. We've seen how valuable that is, and Keaton Mitchell is just a better running back prospect. Not to mention, Derrick Henry is turning 31 this year. That kind of gives me an idea that at some point in the season, they're going to limit his touches. You can't really limit his snaps because every time he's on the field, he's touching the ball almost, but his touches cannot continue to be at 20 plus carries per game, especially later down the line of the season after he's already played 10 games over and over and over and over again, 20 touches. We don't want him to get injured. The Ravens are hopefully in a playoff push. Like, their record isn't great right now, but they're definitely going to hopefully get there. And once they have that playoff spot more or less secured, they're going to use their other running backs just to make sure Derrick Henry doesn't get injured, because they have absolutely no chance of winning anything if he is, which leaves more room for a guy like Keaton Mitchell. But the Ravens are also first in rushing attempts, rushing yards, total rushing offense. It's a very good high upside offense to be in. I love his chances. But Antonio Gibson is a guy that I'm picking up more sooner rather than later, because there is a very real chance that Ramondre completely gets his usage cut in half. He's had 4 fumbles in 4 weeks. That's just something coaches can't look past. And he has been decreasing his snaps since week 1. Now, is that a him issue or is that a team issue? It's probably both, because you look at his numbers from the past couple weeks, you can blame a lot of that inefficiency just from the offense being terrible. In the first 2 weeks, they won a game, they went into overtime in a game. The last 2 weeks, they just got absolutely destroyed. So he is a game script dependent running back. I don't think anyone was expecting otherwise, but that really makes his usage on his own very shaky for the rest of the year. The only thing I think that can save him is if Drake May comes into this offense, and who knows if that's actually going to happen. I feel like it should at some point, but I'm not the coach. All of that just to say, to put the nail in the coffin, if you have Ramondre on your team, I'm looking to sell him as soon as possible. Head coach Gerard Mayo said to the media, I am considering starting Antonio Gibson over Ramondre Stevenson for this week's matchup in week 5. It is very rare for a coach to straight up say that, because the other team's going to game plan for Antonio Gibson. Just like with the Christian McCaffrey injury, he knew he wasn't going to play since Friday, but nobody knew that. He was a game time decision. And then Jordan Mason said Christian McCaffrey was out since Friday in his interview. Everybody was talking crazy about that, and that's really not something you're supposed to do. So if he's already saying Antonio Gibson's going to get more snaps, it's almost a guarantee. So get Antonio Gibson on your team as soon as possible, because once his snap share increases and he has a big game this week in numbers, maybe not fantasy points, he's going to be off of every single waiver wire. You're not going to be able to get him. He's barely rostered right now, so it'll be pretty easy. But he's a very, very good receiving back. So if he gets that role from Ramondre, which who knows, he might get more than that, he's going to be valuable, even if this offense is still absolutely terrible. But another running back, if you're in deeper leagues and you just need that help, is CEH. He could really be a good part of this offense. Nobody is filling in 1-for-1 for Isaiah Pacheco. It's not Carson Steele. It's not Samaje Perine. The closest thing you have to that is Kareem Hunt, a guy who's been in and out of this team for the longest time, because Carson Steele is dealing with a fumble problem. He essentially got benched after he fumbled last week. Perine's snaps and usage really didn't go up that much. Kareem Hunt looks like the RB1. He got the most of the touches. But I guarantee you, in a matter of weeks when CEH comes back into this offense, he's going to have a 100% chance to earn this RB1 role. Kareem Hunt isn't anything crazy to beat out. They need somebody to fill in for Isaiah Pacheco. I do believe if he does perform pretty well, he will get that role. If not, have a mini role throughout the rest of the season. Probably not rosterable, but there's still a chance. He's not an urgent add in the means he likely won't go crazy in his first week that he plays, but if you're on the Chiefs team, you're going to get some touches, especially considering this backfield is so up in the air. Everybody's going to overreact, and you're probably not going to be able to get him very easily. I do think he'll carve out a role for himself, though. He's been in this offense before. He knows how it works. He's backed up Pacheco before. But another running back, if you don't like him, that I guarantee you nobody is talking about as much as they should, is Kendre Miller. Again, if you have an IR slot, you can roster him there for a week. And he's had some upside. We saw in his last game after injury, 13 rush attempts, 73 yards, and a touchdown, all only on 36% of the snaps. He hasn't really had a secure snap share at all ever in his career, but he is still really, really young, and he's shown good efficiency on what he has seen. And he's going to be backing up Alvin Kamara on a team that's second in rushing attempts, 7th in rushing yards, and top 10 in overall rushing offense. He runs routes out of the backfield. He's a decent pass catcher, so that can complement Alvin Kamara because he gets almost all of it right now. And Jamal Williams has been backing him up, seeing 20% of the snaps every game, about 7 touches. That can be Kendre Miller's. I fully do believe he's a better running back. He's been on this team before, and they will be using him. They didn't draft him with high draft capital for nothing. I'd stash him on my IR slot 100%. But if you need to beat people off the waiver wire for defenses in week 6, maybe you have a really tough matchup that week, or whatever the case may be, you're bad at managing your fab, you don't have any left, your waiver priority is going to suck. These are some defenses that you can pick up right now that have a decent matchup this week, but have a way, way better matchup in week 6. So you can stay one step ahead and finesse everybody. Number 1 is going to be the Bears. To get a matchup against the Panthers this week, that is enough of an explanation for itself. They do look a little bit better with Andy Dalton, though. They're still a fine start. People probably already picked them up off waivers. But then in week 6, they get a matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this might be a hit or miss team at this point, because last week we saw against the Texans, they actually generated some offense. So if you stash the Bears, play them this week. You can wait and see how the Jaguars look this week. If they look good again, you don't have to play them. But if they don't, which they probably won't, it's a great matchup. Another great defense to go ahead and add, if you have an extra roster spot though, is the Texans. Their matchup this week against the Bills is very, very bad. I wouldn't be starting them here. But then in week 6, they get the Patriots. That's enough of an explanation. Again, the offense is terrible. The offensive line sucks. There should be a lot of sack opportunities there. They will be gone instantly off your waiver wire in week 6. So if you have a spot, you can go ahead and roster them a week early. And the Chargers are another one. They are on bye this week, but then they get the Broncos in week 6, and that's terrible. They barely generate any kind of offense. Thank you guys for watching this video, though. I will see you in the next one coming tomorrow.